Let me ask you something honest. Not the kind of question you answer out loud, the kind you feel in your chest before you even form the words. Do you feel like you're moving forward financially? Or does it feel like you're working, grinding, showing up every single day, and somehow still standing in the same place you were 2 years ago? Because here's what nobody tells you. That feeling isn't a money problem, it's a stage problem. Most people spend their entire lives believing that wealth is a straight line. Work harder, earn more, save more, and eventually, somewhere out there, things get better. But that's not how it works. That's never been how it works. Wealth doesn't move in a straight line. It moves in stages. And the reason most people stay stuck isn't because they're lazy. It isn't because the system is impossible to beat. It isn't even because they lack talent or intelligence. It's because nobody ever showed them the map. They don't know which stage they're in. They don't know what behavior belongs to that stage. And they don't know what it actually takes to move through it. So they keep doing what they've always done, working hard inside a stage they don't understand, wondering why the results never change. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He studied power, not as a philosopher sitting in comfort, but as a man who watched leaders rise and collapse in real time. And what he observed was this: men rarely fail because they lack strength. They fail because they misread their position. They fight battles that belong to a different stage. They use strategies that worked somewhere else. They apply pressure in the wrong direction and wonder why the wall doesn't move. The same principle governs financial life today. Your income is not your enemy. Your habits are not your only problem. What's actually holding you back is operating inside a stage you haven't fully identified, using tools that don't belong to where you actually are. This video is the map. 6 stages. Every financially free person has moved through all of them. Most people stall somewhere in the first 3 and never understand why. Pay attention, because somewhere in the next few minutes, you're going to recognize yourself. And that recognition, that moment of clarity, is worth more than any piece of financial advice you've ever received. Because you can't navigate out of a stage you refuse to see. Stage 1. Survival. This is where almost everyone begins. And there's no shame in that, but there is danger in staying here longer than necessary, and most people do. Stage 1 looks like this. Every month is a calculation, not a plan. A calculation. How much comes in, how much has to go out, and whether what's left is enough to make it to the next paycheck without something going wrong. You're not saving, you're not investing, you're not thinking about the future in any real sense, because the present is consuming everything you have. This is survival mode, and it has a very specific feeling. It feels like tightness, constant, low-grade tightness, not always panic, not always crisis. Just this permanent background hum of financial anxiety that never fully goes away. Even when things are technically okay, even when the bills are paid, the feeling remains. Because in stage 1, you're not building anything, you're maintaining. And maintenance is exhausting in a way that growth never is. Because maintenance has no finish line. You just keep running to stay in the same place. Machiavelli warned about this trap specifically. He said the man who only reacts to what life brings him will never accumulate power. Because power is not collected through reaction. It is collected through intention. And in stage 1, almost everything is reaction. The car breaks down. You react. The rent goes up. You react. A medical bill appears. You react. Your entire financial life is a series of responses to things that already happened. That's not a life. That's a defense. Now, here's what's important. Most people believe they are stuck in stage 1 because they don't make enough money. That is almost never the real reason. The real reason is identity. In stage 1, people unconsciously believe that financial struggle is their normal, not a temporary condition, not a stage. They're normal, and because they believe it's normal, they build habits, relationships, and routines that confirm it, They spend to cope. They avoid looking at their numbers because the numbers create anxiety. They tell themselves, "I'll start saving when things get better," not realizing that things don't get better until the behavior changes first. John D. Rockefeller understood this before he had a dollar to his name. As a young bookkeeper earning almost nothing, he did something that felt almost irrational given his circumstances. He saved, not because he had extra money, he didn't, but because he understood one thing most people in stage 1 never grasp. The habit is the foundation. The money comes after. He wasn't saving an amount, he was building an identity. That is the only exit from stage 1, not a raise, not a windfall, not better circumstances. A decision made quietly, consistently, often without any immediate reward, that your financial future is non-negotiable, not optional, not when things improve, non-negotiable. The moment that decision becomes real, not a thought, not an intention, but a lived behavior, stage 1 begins to crack. And you start to enter something far more dangerous. Stage 2, awareness. Stage 2 is more uncomfortable than stage 1, and that surprises most people because from the outside, awareness sounds like progress. It sounds like the good part. You're waking up. You're seeing clearly. Surely that's better than being asleep. And yes, awareness is progress. But awareness without action is its own kind of trap. And it is far more seductive than ignorance. Because in stage 2, you feel like you're moving forward. You're reading the books. You're watching the videos. You're having the conversations. You understand intellectually what needs to change, but your bank account doesn't know that yet. This is the stage where people spend years consuming information about wealth without applying it, understanding the principles without executing them, feeling productive through learning while the actual behavior stays exactly the same. Machiavelli had no patience for this stage. He wrote that the man who understands everything but acts on nothing is more dangerous to himself than the man who understands nothing, because the ignorant man might stumble forward by accident. But the aware man who doesn't act has chosen his own limitation. He has seen the door and decided not to open it. That is the real trap of stage 2. You know enough to feel guilty about your habits, but you haven't yet committed enough to change them. So you live in this uncomfortable middle space, aware of the gap, not yet willing to close it. And this is where ego becomes the enemy, because in stage 2, people often begin performing awareness instead of living it. They talk about investing but don't invest. They explain financial principles to others while their own accounts sit untouched. They use the language of wealth without the behavior of wealth. And every day they spend in that space, the gap between where they are and where they understand they could be grows a little wider. Here's the uncomfortable question stage 2 demands. Not, do you know what to do? You do. You've known for a while. The question is, why haven't you done it? Because the answer to that question is where stage 2 actually ends. It ends the moment you stop consuming the map and start walking the territory. Even imperfectly. Even with the wrong shoes. Even when you're not sure you're going the right direction. Movement through discomfort is the only exit from stage 2. Not more information. Not better understanding. Movement. Warren Buffett didn't study investing for years before buying his first stock. He bought his first stock as a child, not because he had complete knowledge, but because ownership teaches things that observation never can. You learn the stage by entering it, not by watching it from the outside. And once you make that first real move, not the plan, not the intention, the actual move, you step into the first stage where real power begins to accumulate. Stage 3, control. This is where the game changes. Not dramatically, not overnight, but fundamentally. Stage 3 is the first stage where wealth becomes possible. Not because your income suddenly grows. It might not, but because for the first time, your behavior is no longer running on autopilot. You are directing your money instead of reacting to it. Control looks different from the outside than it feels from the inside. From the outside, nothing seems remarkable. You're not rich. You're not impressive. You might even look exactly the same as you did in stage 1. But inside the numbers, something has shifted. You know where your money goes. Every dollar has a direction before the month begins. You're paying yourself first. Not whatever is left after everything else, but first. Before comfort, before convenience, before the subscriptions and the takeout, and the small daily decisions that quietly drain everything you earn. You've created a system, a simple one, but a real one, and that system is changing your identity faster than it's changing your bank account. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that control always comes before power. Most people want the power first, the financial freedom, the options, the breathing room, but they haven't built the control that makes those things sustainable. Control is the foundation. Without it, any money that arrives, through a raise, a windfall, a business success, gets absorbed by the old habits immediately. You've seen this happen. People who earn more and somehow end up with less. People who receive unexpected money and find it gone within months. That's not bad luck. That's stage 1 behavior, operating on a stage 3 income. The money was never the problem. The absence of control was. In stage 3, you build the infrastructure of wealth before the wealth arrives. You track every dollar. You automate your savings so willpower is never the deciding factor. You create a second account with no easy access, no debit card, no app on your phone, no temptation, out of sight, out of mind, untouched. And slowly, quietly, something begins to accumulate. Not just money, discipline, identity, the lived experience of being someone who manages money rather than someone who is managed by it. That shift is everything. The Rothschild banking empire didn't begin with vast wealth. It began with precision, with tracking, with knowing exactly where every unit of value was at every moment. Awareness creates leverage, but only when it is paired with control. Stage 3 is where that pairing happens. But here's the warning. Stage 3 has a trap of its own, and it's a comfortable trap, which makes it more dangerous than the uncomfortable ones. The trap is this. Control feels like enough. You've escaped the tightness of stage 1. You've moved past the paralysis of stage 2. You're disciplined. You're organized. Your finances are stable. Life feels manageable in a way it never did before. And so people stop here. Not because they've achieved everything they want, but because they've achieved enough to be comfortable. And comfort, as Machiavelli warned, is the enemy of expansion. The man who mistakes stability for victory stops building at precisely the moment the real building should begin. Because stage 3 is not the destination. It is the launch pad. And the next stage, the one most people never fully enter, is where the trajectory of your entire financial life either bends permanently upward or flattens out forever. Stage 4. Leverage. This is where most people hesitate. Not because they don't understand it. By stage 4, most people have enough awareness to recognize what leverage means. They've heard the concept. They understand the theory. They can explain it to someone else without missing a beat. But understanding leverage and stepping into it are two completely different acts. Because leverage requires something that control never demanded. It requires you to stop being the engine. In stage 3, you were the engine. Your discipline was the engine. Your tracking was the engine. Your automated transfers and your carefully managed budget, all of it ran on you, on your consistency, on your daily decisions. And that felt good, because it was proof that you had changed. But leverage asks you to build something that runs without you. And for people who have spent years fighting for control, that feels dangerous. It feels like letting go of the wheel on a road you only just learned to drive. So they hesitate. They tell themselves they're not ready. They say they need more capital first, more knowledge, more certainty, more time. But here's what Machiavelli understood about hesitation. It is never actually about the thing you say it's about. The person standing at the edge of stage 4 is not afraid of leverage. They are afraid of becoming the kind of person who uses it, because that person is unfamiliar. That person operates differently, thinks differently, makes decisions that the stage 3 version of them would have called reckless. And unfamiliar always feels dangerous before it feels natural. So let's name what leverage actually looks like at this stage. It doesn't look like a real estate empire. It doesn't look like a venture-backed startup. It doesn't look like anything loud or dramatic or impressive from the outside. Leverage at stage 4 looks quiet. It looks like a digital product you created once and sell repeatedly. A freelance service. You've packaged so efficiently, it no longer requires your constant presence to deliver. A piece of content that continues generating attention and income long after you stopped actively promoting it. A small investment position that compounds in the background while you live your life. None of it is flashy. All of it is effective. Because the purpose of stage 4 leverage isn't to make you rich overnight. It's to introduce your financial life to a concept it has never encountered before. Income that doesn't require your time. That concept, simple as it sounds, changes everything. Because once you experience it, even in a small way, your relationship with time changes permanently. You stop measuring your financial potential in hours. You start measuring it in systems. And systems scale in ways that hours never can. Warren Buffett understood this as a teenager. Delivering newspapers wasn't just a job to him, it was the beginning of a mental model. He was studying the difference between income that required his presence and income that didn't, between trading time and building systems. That mental model, formed early, applied consistently, became the foundation of everything that followed. Now here's what stage 4 also demands, that nobody talks about. Protection. Because the moment money starts growing, beyond what's needed for survival and control, a new enemy appears. Not external, internal. The urge to reward yourself. The feeling that you've earned it. The quiet voice that says you've been disciplined long enough and now it's time to enjoy the results. And this voice is not wrong exactly. Rest matters. Enjoyment matters. But stage 4 has a specific vulnerability that this voice exploits. The systems you're building are still fragile. The income streams are still new. The investment positions are still small. Everything is growing, but nothing is yet strong enough to absorb a major withdrawal without losing momentum. Machiavelli would call this the moment of maximum danger dressed as the moment of reward. This is why the 5th strategy from the first pillar of wealth still applies here. Make your money untouchable, not forever, but for now. Discipline is fragile. Systems are not. Build the barrier between your impulses and your progress before the impulse arrives, not after. Because once stage 4 systems are protected long enough to compound, something shifts beneath the surface. You stop feeling like someone who is building toward wealth. You start feeling like someone who already operates from a different position. And that feeling, quiet, steady, unmistakable, is the first signal that stage 5 is approaching. Stage 5 is approaching. Stage 5, expansion. Stage 5 is where the rules change again. Not the financial rules, the identity rules. Because by stage 5, the financial mechanics are largely in place. Multiple income streams exist. Investments are compounding. Systems are running. The infrastructure of wealth, built carefully through stages 3 and 4, is no longer theoretical. It is real. It is producing. What changes in stage 5 is how you see yourself in relation to money. You stop being someone who manages money. You become someone money works for. And that distinction is not semantic. It is structural. It changes how you make decisions. It changes what opportunities you notice. It changes who you spend time with, what risks feel reasonable, and what version of the future you're willing to plan toward. Machiavelli called this positioning the state in which your accumulated power begins to attract more power, not through chasing, but through gravity. Wealthy people understand gravity. They build until their presence in a space is undeniable enough that opportunity begins moving toward them rather than away from them. That's not arrogance. That's the natural result of consistent, compounding value. But stage 5 has a trap that is more subtle than any of the previous stages. Visibility. Because at stage 5, the temptation to announce your position becomes very strong. You've worked quietly for years. You've been disciplined when others weren't. You've made sacrifices that nobody witnessed and built things nobody celebrated. And now, finally, there are results worth showing. The trap is showing them, not because success should be hidden out of false modesty, but because visibility at stage 5 attracts forces that can quietly erode what you've built. Lifestyle inflation moves in silently. Social expectations expand. People around you begin to form opinions about what your money should be doing, for them, for appearances, for the image of someone at your level. And if you accommodate those forces even partially, you begin spending energy defending a position rather than expanding it. The old money families understood this instinctively. They stayed wealthy, not by displaying their wealth, but by protecting it. Visibility invites interference, and interference costs momentum. This is what stealth wealth actually means at stage 5. Not hiding your success out of shame, protecting your momentum out of strategy. You continue building quietly. You continue investing. You continue expanding the systems that are producing results. And you do it without announcing every step, without performing wealth for an audience that gains from your distraction. The expansion of stage 5 is internal before it is external. It shows in your decisions long before it shows in your lifestyle. And the people who protect that quiet, who resist the pull toward performance and stay focused on the compound, those are the people who eventually arrive somewhere most people only watch from the outside. Stop for a moment. Not to take notes, not to think about the next stage. Just stop and ask yourself honestly, not the version of yourself you present to the world, but the actual version. Which stage are you in right now? Not the stage you want to be in, not the stage you feel like you deserve to be in based on how hard you've been working. The stage your behavior proves, because your behavior doesn't lie, your calendar doesn't lie, your bank statement doesn't lie, the way you respond when an unexpected expense appears, that doesn't lie either. One word, that's all, just one word that names where you actually are. Because that word, honest, specific, uncomfortable as it might be, is the most valuable piece of financial information you possess right now. You cannot navigate out of a stage you refuse to name. Machiavelli said that the most dangerous illusion is the one a man constructs about himself, not the lies others tell him, the lies he tells himself about where he stands. Name the stage, then move. Stage 6, legacy. Most people will never reach stage 6, not because it is impossibly difficult, not because it requires extraordinary talent or rare circumstance, but because stage 6 demands something that every previous stage has been quietly building toward, and most people exhaust themselves before they arrive here. Stage 6 requires a complete shift in the question you are asking. Every previous stage was organized around a version of the same question. How do I improve my financial position? Stage 3 asked it through control. Stage 4 asked it through systems. Stage 5 asked it through expansion and compounding. All of it, every strategy, every discipline, every quiet sacrifice, was ultimately in service of personal financial evolution. Stage 6 asks a different question entirely. What does this become after me? That question is not comfortable, because it forces you to think beyond the version of wealth that feels personal and immediate and earned. It asks you to consider your financial life not as a destination you've arrived at, but as a foundation you're laying for something larger than yourself. Generational thinking. This is where the Machiavellian philosophy reaches its highest expression, because Machiavelli understood that true power, the kind that endures, the kind that shapes history rather than just participating in it, is never built for a single lifetime. The men who changed the trajectory of civilization didn't build for today. They built structures, systems, and foundations that continued producing long after they were gone. The Rockefeller family, the Rothschild dynasty, the great merchant families of Florence that Machiavelli himself observed. None of them were building for a retirement account. They were building for permanence. Now, stage 6 does not require a dynasty. It does not require billions or generational estates or names on buildings. What it requires is a mind that has expanded beyond personal accumulation. Parent who builds a financial education into their children's earliest years, not just inheritance, but philosophy. Not just money, but the understanding of how money works, how power moves, how stages function. A person who creates systems, businesses, content, intellectual property, investment structures, that continue generating value beyond their active involvement. Builder who thinks not in quarters or years, but in decades. That is stage 6. And here is what separates the people who reach it from the people who stall in stage 5, ego. Because stage 5 still carries the fingerprints of personal achievement, the pride of having built something, the satisfaction of financial independence earned through discipline and strategy. All of it is legitimate. All of it is deserved. But ego, if left unchecked, makes stage 5 feel like the destination. It whispers that you've arrived, that the work is done, that what you've built is enough, and now it's time to enjoy it fully, protect it carefully, and let the story end here. Stage 6 requires you to refuse that whisper. Not out of restlessness, not out of greed, but out of a deeper understanding that wealth which ends with you was only ever half built. Real wealth is not a trophy. It is a tree, and a tree that only grows for one generation has shallow roots. The final shift stage 6 demands is this: automation of legacy, not just of income. You have already learned, somewhere between stage 3 and stage 4, that automating your financial systems removes willpower from the equation and makes progress inevitable. The same principle applies at stage 6. Build structures that carry your values, your philosophy, and your financial intelligence forward without requiring your constant presence to maintain them. Trusts, family financial frameworks, documented philosophy. Businesses with culture and systems strong enough to outlast their founder. Investments positioned for decades rather than quarters. These are not abstract concepts for the ultra-wealthy. They are decisions, available at every level of stage 6, scalable to whatever resources you currently hold. Because legacy is not a number. Legacy is a decision about what your wealth means beyond your lifetime. And the moment you make that decision, the moment you shift from building for yourself to building for what comes after, something changes in how you operate every single day. You become more patient, more strategic, more immune to the short-term noise that derails people in earlier stages, because you're no longer playing a game with a personal finish line. You're building something that doesn't end. Now, step back. 6 stages, every one of them a distinct territory, with its own rules, its own traps, and its own exit. Stage 1, survival. The trap is believing it's permanent. Stage 2, awareness. The trap is mistaking knowledge for movement. Stage 3, control. The trap is mistaking stability for arrival. Stage 4, leverage. The trap is hesitating at the edge of the unfamiliar. Stage 5, expansion. The trap is performing success instead of protecting it. Stage 6, legacy. The trap is letting ego make stage 5 feel like enough. You are somewhere on this map right now, not where you want to be, where you actually are. And the most powerful thing you can do, right now, in this moment, is name it without flinching, without softening it, without telling yourself you're between stages or almost at the next one. Be precise, be honest, be cold about it. Because Machiavelli's most enduring lesson was not about power over others. It was about power over self-deception. The man who sees himself clearly, who knows exactly which stage he occupies and exactly what behavior that stage demands, that man is already moving, not toward wealth as a concept, toward wealth as an identity. And identity, once shifted, does not go backwards. The stage you're in is not your sentence. It is your current assignment. Complete it, then move, quietly, precisely, without waiting for permission or perfect conditions or the right moment. Because the right moment is always the same moment. It is now, and if this shifted the way you see yourself, even a little, then don't stop here, because what you've heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, influence, and wealth that simply can't be explored fully in one video. Not because they don't exist, but because most people aren't ready to hear them. That's why most stay average. If you're not one of them, subscribe. Because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. Few will stay and change. Decide which one you are. Decide which one you are.